Today's guest is a two-time Tony-nominated choreographer whose work spans from TV to film to Broadway. Please welcome to the Zoom, John Carrafa.
Oops, what up?
Hello.
You're such a good host.
Thank
Nice
you.
job.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's very exciting. These are always really fun to do. I really like, who doesn't like talking about themselves? So
It's funny you say that because the last person I interviewed also said, we're actors, we want to talk about ourselves.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. Mhm.
Well, I always start behind the resume by talking about how we met. And we met on Dead to Me. You
Right,
choreographed Dead to Me, and I was fortunate enough to get to be a part of the Holy Harmonies.
right.
And that is how we met.
You were just a young child star at that point, not the adult star you are now.
Oh my gosh, that was my first ever TV experience, dancing on a TV show. And what
Uh,
was wild is that our first rehearsal, that's when the fires were going on in like the LA
oh,
area. And so
uh-huh.
I was evacuated for 4 days prior to that first rehearsal.
Wow, I
I
didn't
didn't
know
have,
that.
yeah, I didn't have any clothes with me because I didn't think we'd be evacuated. And
Wow.
so I just remember showing up to that first rehearsal at Millennium with clothes that I had just bought. I smell like ashes, and I'm like, here I am.
Wow, that was a crazy thing for me because I didn't cast most of the dancers. I just met you guys that morning. All of you had such different abilities. You
Mhm.
had the whole range of ages and abilities and talents and styles. The whole idea of the Holy Harmonies is that you're this unified group. It was a challenge. It was a challenge. And then, we you could say like we've done a few seasons of it, of Dead to Me, and the Holy Harmonies have sort of stayed on as like a presence on the show.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super cool. I'm just walking down the street and someone's like, "Oh my God, you were a Holy Harmony." Okay.
Isn't it amazing? Yeah, it's amazing.
So where are you from?
So I grew up in Connecticut, East Coaster, and I guess this is about sort of background, right? So I went to college, I was pre-med, and
Oh,
then
dang.
yeah, I mean, I grew up in a very blue collar town, blue collar family, Waterbury, Connecticut, Italian family. There was no, like, I didn't know that even the idea of being a dancer was a job.
Wow.
Um, so I had the classic story. My sister was signing up for dance classes, and I was there, and they're like, "Do you want to take class too?" And I was like, "Sure." And everybody was shocked because it was a dance school with like 300 girls and three
Yeah.
boys. But the thing that was important for me is that it wasn't in my town, it was the next town over. So no one had to know at my school or that I was doing this. It was kind of my secret. I would go to this other town and take the dance class.
How old were you?
11, 12. It was like tap and jazz. I
Yeah.
wouldn't take ballet. It's like, there's no way I'm wearing tights. Don't even try.
Uh-huh.
Until later, when I got older. But I've said this a couple of times lately. It was always a secret. So even now, I feel like when I'm dancing or choreographing, I'm sort of exposing a very kind of private part of myself. And I think on that level, I can understand how actors feel vulnerable when they dance because they're always have their skin on their out they're always inside out emotionally. So I relate to that. I mean, I've always felt like when I dance it's kind of revealing my private self.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of a vulnerable kind of thing for me. It's funny. I'm even a little shy about it. Like I don't really dance at weddings. I don't,
That's so
I,
funny.
people's like, come on, Johnny, let's see what
Yeah.
you're gonna do, and that's
Yeah.
like the last thing I want to do. So I went to school to be a doctor, Bates College in Maine, baby Ivy League school, got the degree, worked in a hospital, and at the same time, I was always, taking class. And then later, I started studying ballet and Martha Graham technique at the Hartford Ballet, and the whole time I'm on the track to be a doctor. And at a certain point, I was in the hospital working in a physical therapy department. I had a really great job, which was to transport people from their hospital beds down to the physical therapy department. So it meant, and I had a biology degree being pre-med. It meant sort of really having an understanding of their injuries and how to get them from the bed to the gurney and then from the gurney into the whirlpool or whatever it was in physical therapy. And, that was interesting to me. But I was at the hospital and I saw a doctor smoking one day outside. And I was like, wait, there was something about that that just clicked for me. Being in the hospital and realizing like I'm not one of these people. and I really meant to do this other thing
Yeah.
to dance, but it just seemed like going to the moon to me. It seems so completely like, how would anybody ever do that? How is it even possible, to have a career doing that? I didn't know, my father's an electrician, a lot of factory workers in my family, my extended Italian, I had a big Italian family. So there was no precedent, I didn't really have anyone telling me like, oh, do it like this.
Yeah.
When I was in college, I did little things, jumping into little events. I put on an event at school, a dance thing. I just was always kind of creating my own opportunities. I got in a small dance. So I worked in the hospital for a while. I was like, no, this isn't quite right. That was my junior year. So back up in college, I got into a dance company in Maine that was just like 6 or 7 of us in this little dance company. And Brenner Mella, a dancer from Merce Cunningham Company. I don't know if you know them, but they're a modern dance company. Um, Came up to Maine and was the artistic director. So I started actually having like dancing full time, making $37 a week and thinking like, well, is this possible? And I started to audition around. I auditioned for the Pennsylvania Ballet, the Pittsburgh Ballet, and then I auditioned for a dance company in Boston called Concert Dance Company that did, I don't know if you know Pilobolus, but they did some of the early works of Pilobolus. If anybody looks up Pilobolus, you'll recognize who they are. They kind of do sculptural modern dance pieces. At the same time, Twyla Tharp was doing a workshop in Boston.
Wow.
And Twyla is, right? Yeah. She was doing a workshop in Boston and there were no Boston dancers. So they did an audition to have scholarships for one man and one woman to do this workshop in Boston with Twyla, which was going to be a 6-week live-in thing up on an estate that had, I don't know, it was like a big rolling acres, but they made studios. And
Cool.
so I got the one male scholarship, which, and what was funny about that was I had just gotten into the Boston Dance Company. So I was like a Boston dancer for a week.
Yeah.
So I qualified to get the Boston Dancer Scholarship. And then I did this workshop with Twyla, and the workshop was, get up every morning at 7:30, run to the top of this hill, do calisthenics, run back, do ballet class, then do, repertory classes, student repertory classes all day long, learn things in her repertory, and then can't remember what we did in the early evening, but it was like fully immersive workshop. Every morning you'd go and look and see whether you were like in the ballet class A or ballet class B and what your schedule would be. And on Monday of the second week, I went and looked and my name wasn't on the class schedule anymore. It was on the company schedule.
What?
And because the company was in residence at the same time. So I thought, oh, well, this is a mistake, and nobody said anything to me. I just looked, it's like, there's my name. And so the company rehearsal schedule. So I walked into company rehearsal, I was just a student, and Twyla said just like, oh, just learn this. She started making a piece that was eventually Baker's Dozen, which was one of her famous like pieces for the whole company. For those 5 weeks, then I was a company member and working with the company, taking class in the morning. Everybody else kind of hated me a little bit because I was singled out and
Yeah.
taken out of the student group. Twyla was famous for picking up people and dropping them. And what's funny is I've told the story before. When I was in college, when I was up at Bates, there was I used to go to the library and there was like one shelf
Uh,
that had dance books on it, and I would look through those books, and I also looked through the New York Times every day and see what was happening in dance. But there was one photo in one of the dance books, and it had a picture of a Twyla Tharp piece called Mud, and the guys were wearing sneakers and the women were wearing point shoes in this dance. And I thought, oh, if there's any company that feels right for me, it would be that one, because it was kind of like macho athletic, really kind of like athletic dancing. And also in this sort of world, the modern dance world, as opposed to the ballet world, the guys really danced. We weren't just, there to, hold the women while they turn, like, and then pick them
yeah.
up, and, you know,
Yeah.
and in a ballet company, like, there's only sort of the few at the top that really get to dance. And in Twyla's company, we really got to dance. So she was famous for picking up people and dropping them. The last day of the workshop, she said, let's go out for ice cream. And we went out and she offered me an apprenticeship with the company in New York. So a couple weeks later, I was in New York for the first time in my life, stayed with my cousin who was a stewardess and had an apartment there. It was $200 a week, so-called apprentice with the company, but essentially I was doing everything, learning everything. That was August. In January of the following January, I was in every piece on the program. We were at BAM, where Brooklyn Academy of Music was like where Twyla did her like New York performance seasons. And then a couple months after that, we were touring and we're all over the world. And then I assisted her and we did Amadeus and Ragtime and Zelig and movies and
Okay.
Broadway.
Were you still pre-med?
No, no, no. I
Oh,
dropped that. I dropped that. Actually, you know, I had finished college
okay.
right after college, and I was trying to decide what to do. And I had actually also I'd gotten in concert dance company,
Mhm.
and I had gotten a full scholarship to Ohio State master's program in dance. They had a MFA in dance. Then I got in Twyla's company, so I told both of them, concert dance company and Ohio State, like, sorry, I got into Twyla's company. So
My gosh.
and yeah, had by then I had realized, like I said, when I worked in the hospitals, like this it really isn't me.
Yeah.
So here I was in Twyla's company, a 52-week salary as a dancer. We never went on unemployment, dancing all over the world, dancing at the White House, movies, Broadway, and assisting her everywhere. And I think of it as her heyday when she made a lot of the pieces, Nine Sinatra songs, In the Upper Room, Baker's Dozen, Brahms, all these pieces that now she licenses all over the world. They're kind of her core repertory, especially Sinatra and In the Upper Room. I just noticed she's doing a program in New York coming up where it's going to be Nine Sinatra songs and In the Upper Room, the Philip Glass piece. That's going to be the show every night. And those are the pieces that I worked on with her, creating them, and was sort of integral in her process and in a whole era of her career in creating new work. That was 10 years. Then I did 10 years with her. I assisted her on many things. I was in, I think, almost every new piece she made in those 10 years. Maybe like a couple of pieces she made that I wasn't in, and just toured the world and got to really be a dancer.
Mhm.
Got to really, like, I feel like I really experienced a dance career, a full dance career. I got to do solos, I got to dance on Broadway. And with Twyla, I really was able to be in a very a creative melting pot isn't the right word, but a creative incubator for new work. We were a 52-week company. We never went on unemployment. I took class, 6 days a week, ballet class. I would come back after taking Sunday off on Monday and feel like, oh, I lost everything.
Yeah.
Like that's how sensitive like we were, and it was highly competitive. You always felt like you could lose your place at any moment. So it was 10 years of like being a really dedicated athlete and thinking about nothing but dance
Mhm.
and performing. And we're working 52 weeks a year. We're touring a few months out of the year, but the rest of the year we're just making new stuff. And out of every, 5 or 6 pieces she would make, one of them would be shown to the public, and there others would be thrown out.
Mm.
And so, it was just every day being in a constantly evolving and creative situation. People were coming in, David Byrne or John Irving, writers, composers would come to rehearsal and collaborate. And so
Wow.
it set up for me the expectation that I would, sort of do the same thing in my career and have that same kind of creative life, as a choreographer.
Oh my
So
gosh.
that takes you up to end of 10 years with Twyla.
How would you describe yourself as a kid?
Oh, quiet, kind of an observer. Like I'm the kind of person that would like go to a party and stand on the outside and watch.
Hmm.
I have a very loud, boisterous Italian family, and I was the quiet one. It's like, hey, Johnny, why is he so quiet? I don't know, maybe sensitive, not kind of outgoing. I think more introverted, quiet. I think because I felt more not on the same wavelength as the rest of the big, loud family, I sort of pulled back to sort of try to figure them all out and
Yeah.
observe, the situation.
What drew you to dance initially?
When I was a kid in my living room, I remember standing in front of the mirror and doing moves and thinking that there was something special about what I could do. I think I had a kinesthetic connection, and I would do stuff and go like, you know, I bet nobody else can do this like I can, or
Uh-huh.
what is this thing I can do? I was kind of fascinated with my ability to just move. When my sister was signing up and that girl asked me, it's like, do you want to take dance class too? I said yes. I also think, I was straight, I was a boy. I think I was always open-minded. I mean, you had to be open-minded about what I would do, and about this sort of thing. And so I think I was drawn to the fact that it was such an unusual thing for me to do.
Yeah.
But I was also really fascinated with what dance is, and if you're good at something, it just makes you want to do it more.
Yeah,
You
for sure.
When I took that very, very first dance class with one of the teenagers that was teaching at this school with 300 girls and a couple of boys, she said, I'll teach you some steps and maybe I can catch you up to some of the other one of the levels. And she started teaching me stuff, and I picked up so quickly. She was like, are you sure you haven't taken dance class before? I said, no, I'm just doing what you're showing me. I just was it's very seductive when you're good at something,
Hmm.
because with dance, it's like, that's why I took class every day. The better you get, the more you want to do.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's like class is addictive, because if you take class every day, you see the results. If you could do 4 turns, it's more fun than doing 3 turns, and so it gets addictive. Like, so I think even in the very, very beginning, it was just fun.
Were your parents supportive?
My parents just were not supportive or non-supportive. They were kind of neutral about it and really wanted me to do what I wanted to do. At the same time, I think everybody thought it was a little weird, and but nobody would really say, but there was just a sense of like, he's just not quite like other kids, and there's something not quite right about it. And
Hmm.
my best friend across the street knew, eventually, that I was taking these classes, and everybody regarded it as just something suspicious and weird. I mean, there was an element of like people wanting to beat me up or get into fights or that kind of thing.
Wow.
But the thing I felt more was just like, I was different.
Did that affect you?
Yes, I think I've always felt like I didn't quite have my own peer group.
Hmm.
Like, I wasn't one of the gay boys,
Yeah.
and I wasn't one of the girls.
Yeah.
And so I kind of had to find my own way. And so there wasn't like somebody else I could look up to
Hmm.
who I could model myself after. I would talk about like Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly, or something. It was like Twyla was my boss for 10 years. I think it affected me to not have my own group, like a bunch of guys I hung around with who did what I did.
Yeah.
When I would go play basketball and people find out I'm a choreographer, it's like, oh, or later, or a dancer, it's just like there's just like a little bit of a pullback, like,
Hmm.
okay, so this is a little different and weird. Are you gay? But wait, you're straight, but you're a dancer.
If your 11-year-old self could see you now, what do you think he'd say?
First of all, he'd be stunned by iPhones and the way the world is now.
Uh-huh.
I think he'd be really fascinated with the fact that this thing turned into what it did, that it became a career.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a hobby or something cool I could do.
I had no idea that you were pre-med and worked at the hospital. That's incredible. I think a lot of people feel like they reach 10 and they're too old to start something. So when you were working in the hospital, was that fulfilling or you knew it just wasn't your purpose?
Yeah, I knew it wasn't my purpose, but when you're young, I mean, I just didn't think there were other choices.
Mm.
I figured, okay, I could be a doctor. That would be a great thing to be. I love biology and the body,
Uh-huh.
kinesiology. And maybe this is what life is. Maybe life is like it's not that exciting, or, you know, but I came to realize like I would be a terrible doctor too, you know.
After the 10 years with Twyla, where did you go next?
It was hummingbirds outside my window. Because it was so great, it was really hard to justify like, wait, this has now gotten boring, you
Mm.
know, and I needed another challenge. I was getting opportunities because Twyla's company, we danced in LA.
Mhm.
I was getting opportunities to like people would ask me to choreograph things in LA just because I was a dancer. I walked into the studio one day with Twyla and she said, well, okay, what's the music for our next piece? Like, I'm going to choose the music for the dance. And that was when I thought, oh gosh, I've got to start doing this for myself, you know,
Yeah.
and not be the support guy. Because I idolized Twilight, you know, I really felt that she was like one of the greatest choreographers of the 20th century at the time. And I got a couple of movies pretty quickly, a movie called Sing,
Hmm.
and a movie called Rooftops, that were sort of teen pop musical films. And when I got Sing, I'd never choreographed nothing, zero.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
And so I jumped in and I started doing it the way I had worked with Twyla, but there was tremendous tension in that because that's a way of working that works for her. It didn't really work for Broadway or film and TV. So that, you know, for me began a process of sort of coming up with my own way of working and processes and sort of learning what I was interested in. But basically, those two movies came out. They were just pretty much disappeared in a weekend. And then I went through a long slog of building a choreography career.
Mhm.
For a second, I thought I was going to be an actor, and because I identified so much with performing. After a couple of auditions, I just knew like, oh, this really isn't me. Like, I can tell the actors I know could walk away from one of those auditions and not be discouraged by it, just keep going. And I just felt like, wait, this is not who I am in my core.
Mhm.
And as a creator choreographer, that made sense. But it took, I don't know, many years for me to build that career. So I did it, those movies, I did a couple other jobs. Having come from this incredible creative incubator with Twyla, this creative situation, and then I'm going and I'm doing like an AT&T commercial.
Mhm. Yeah.
The kind of stuff I would never do with Twyla,
Yeah.
you know, she was just only, and then I thought, well, this is not the career I spent all these years building my talent for,
Yeah.
developing myself for. So I stopped and I got a job cooking in a restaurant,
Wow.
and I connected with a program called Career Transitions for Dancers,
Uh-huh.
which still exists, which is a great program, and they gave me a grant to study playwriting.
Oh my gosh.
And so I worked as a cook, and I also before that I worked as a receptionist, and I was in a writing workshop at Circle Rep in New York, and had a writing teacher who Mylan Stitt, this amazing writing teacher, and I did that for a few years, and just really worked on. I thought, well, I need to create the context for the dancing.
Hmm.
I didn't really want to start a modern dance company. I was interested in actors and story and theater and dance as storytelling. So I thought, well, these, you know, AT&T commercials and such are not going to end up being fulfilling. In the end, I've got to figure out how I'm going to create my own work.
Yeah.
So I started writing. I wrote a million things, um, and then then I started like just a couple of things started happening. I got another film with John Turturro. Ended up being it was called I think it was called Lame Ducks originally, but then they changed it to Brain Donors. It was like a Marx Brothers at the ballet kind of movie.
Mhm.
I got a play off Broadway called Love, Valor, Compassion, which ended up going to Broadway and then ended up being a movie with Jason Alexander. And things started, I started getting more, slightly more interesting stuff. And so that, that takes you to like building a career on Broadway. That was a little slower. Like Hollywood wanted the hot new thing. Broadway wants more established, artists. And, just slowly, I mean, Sex and the City was one of the first TV shows I got. And then all the producers who worked on that show now hire me on other shows in New York. It's
Yeah.
all, everything has been sort of building this word of mouth
Right.
career. So that's pretty much from stopping everything and deciding to write until now. It's been this slow build of different kinds of projects, Broadway, and then Broadway led to Urinetown and Into the Woods and directing on Broadway and just kind of a long haul of building my career. But when I first stopped with Twyla, after I did those first two movies that came quickly, I was so broke and temping for so long,
Mm.
and just really struggled, midlife, like in my 30s when I stopped dancing, like starting from zero, like as if I had never done anything.
Wow.
I tell this story. I had danced with Twyla at Carnegie Hall with the company, and when after I left the company, a year or so later, I was in Carnegie Hall temping. And I said, hey, I danced here last year.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, just fax this. Like they didn't care.
Yeah.
It was really a rude awakening about being a dancer. And then none of that counted, like starting over again. I wasn't really, I've never been a dance teacher.
Mhm.
I tried teaching ballet for a couple of seconds at Broadway Dance Center. It's been a slow build since then.
What advice would you have to artists who are currently in that position of like struggling?
Would you say, well, you mean people who want to choreograph or just any
Yeah.
field?
People
Or
who want to choreograph and they're just not having that momentum yet.
I guess it depends on what they want to choreograph. How it's done now is different how I did it. Although I do think the relationships are really, in the end, what it's about. People say networking, but for me, it's not really networking. It's just sort of collecting the people who you're like-minded with.
Yeah.
Because there was a time when I tried to network with anybody, like connect with anybody, but you can't just connect with anybody who's out there. You kind of need to find your people. And
Totally.
so over time, the people who are interested in what I'm interested in and those who, I sort of value their who they are and what their aesthetic is, like those people I've gravitated toward, like it's funny, like the other example I give is like when I was working in the theater, I was trying so hard to get a job at North Shore Music Theater,
Mhm.
which is in Massachusetts. Could not get them to look at me for a second. Like they were so uninterested in me.
Mhm.
And then I'm at Sondheim, and then Sondheim, I got Into the Woods right away.
Yeah.
And it's kind of been a theme for me, like the right people would be interested, and then other people wouldn't get me.
Yeah.
Steven Soderbergh, like really, if it's always felt to me like I've aimed too low in a way and sort of not gotten any response, and then somebody will, you know, come along, Robert Zemeckis or Tom Hanks or something, and then I'll click with them right away.
That's amazing. Do you remember finding out about your first Tony nominee?
Tony nomination, yeah, it was actually they were both the same year. So I was sitting, I did Into the Woods and Urinetown that same year, and I'm proud of the fact that there were no dancers in either of those shows. It was all actors.
Uh-huh.
And so I think it's Jennifer Jason Leigh was announcing the Tony nominations on TV, and she said choreography John Carrafa
Uh-huh.
for Into the Woods. I was like, oh, really? They wouldn't give me a nomination for Urinetown? Like that's crazy. And then she said my name again, John Carrafa for Urinetown. So I had two nominations in the same category. And so, yeah, I remember that moment like, this is crazy.
Was it like a out of body? moment, or you really were able to soak it in?
It's hard to, when that happens, to not believe like all your dreams have come true and it's going to mean everything.
Right.
And really sort of, I mean, if I was going to give anybody advice about that, I would give the advice that like James Lapine gave to me. He said, don't take everything that's offered to you.
Mm,
And there's a lot of stuff I took that I wish I hadn't taken job wise after I got the nominations. And when you're struggling so hard to get work, and then suddenly you have all these opportunities, you feel like, oh, I can't turn anything down because maybe it's going to happen again. I need to, but that's the point at which you really have to sort of pull back and maybe don't take anything for a while. And because your reputation is more important than anything, you want to take things, only things that you feel like you could be really good at. George Wolfe said this great thing about how he had to learn that he couldn't, I can't, I'm paraphrasing, but it was just like, he'd get a project and it wouldn't be perfect, but he would think, well, I can make it perfect. And
mm.
he had to learn how you couldn't save things by, coming on to them, and the limits of your own ability to make a job that you're offered better.
What's been the happiest moment of your career?
I think being in the audience and watching the audience's reaction to Urinetown. I used to go many nights during the week, sit in the back and just watch people react to that show and what I did, and how that choreography had come out of me so effortlessly, and how it was just, all felt perfect at that time. Everything felt perfect.
Who do you look up to now?
I do look up to James Lapine a lot. We're friends, and who I mean, look up to, or just people that sort of signifies that maybe I know them.
Mhm.
So Lapine would be in that case. I have another writer friend named Jay Reese, who's a pretty brilliant writer that I admire. But the people who I really admire the most are those guys who have created their own vision, their own world, like Chris Nolan or Aronofsky, or those guys who have sort of really created something completely original, that's theirs, and they write it, direct it, create it.
What has been the most challenging job you've worked on, and why?
Well, directing, you know, when I directed Good Vibrations on Broadway,
Mm.
also never directed anything before. And so navigating the collaboration with the producers
Mhm.
and the budgets and the development of a new musical was something I hadn't done before. And so that was a real challenge. And, now I know there's so many things I know that I would do differently, but that was really hard. And I was directing it and choreographing it and basically co-writing it.
Yeah.
We put the thing together in like 8 months, whereas Jersey Boys took like 6, 7 years, to assemble, because they came up at the same time that we did. That was a huge challenge. The big jumps have been the big challenge, when I've gone and done something completely new. But as a choreographer, been so many different things now. I'm just so comfortable with, there's hardly any situation you could throw at me that I don't know how to handle as a choreographer.
Yeah. What advice would you give to artists starting out?
I feel like one mistake I made, or one thing I would do differently, would be to try to hold on to my own, not stay so long. I'm gonna write a book about this, about what it's like to have a mentor or an artist that's so dominant in your life,
Huh?
and then going on and starting your own career, and how much do you how do you find yourself, how much of them do you take with you,
Mhm.
like say you were Spike Lee's collaborator forever, but then at a certain point you want to start out and create your own career, but Spike Lee is looming over your whole career. I had Twyla looming over my career for quite a while. So, one of the things I would say to people starting out is be aware of that, and sort of make sure that you're kind of cultivating your own voice from the beginning, which I
Mhm.
see you doing, all the time, that you're being clear about developing who you are at the same time, as a performer, you're executing other people's visions and work, and
Mhm.
I think the balance of that is really important.
Mhm. Yeah,
Not
definitely.
losing yourself, like knowing who you are and developing, putting the time into developing who you are as an artist. And because, here I was, I had like 52 weeks salary. All I had to do was eat, sleep, and dance for 10 years
Yeah.
and be there 100% for Twyla. And so that's incredibly seductive. Like I came from a career, a place where I didn't even know you could have a career as a dancer. And here I was having a really good career and dancing all over the world and movies. And so it's um, important to figure out how to balance your own artistic vision with the people that you're, and I do think it's important to do have mentors and study with people, and have other artists in your life.
Yeah. How would you describe the ideal dancer on set when you're choreographing?
I'm thinking of a couple of them. For me, the ideal dancer is a person who gets the creative process
Mhm.
and understands the balance between sort of helping, like jumping in and going like, oh, I could do this here, because you're in it, so you can throw out ideas,
Mhm.
and then the balance between that and when to sort of hang back because something's going on creatively in my mind that I'm trying to solve.
Mm.
Sometimes you need people to solve stuff, but sometimes you need them to let you go through your process to figure it out yourself. So the ideal dancer is like just really attuned to the process. So it takes a lot of smarts, I think, to do that. And then intuition, intelligence, dance intelligence, like have a lot has had a lot of experience in different areas, so they can understand different ways of working, is flexible about different ways of working, because I do all sorts of different things when I try to make a dance.
Yeah.
I think it's that. It's like the ideal dancer is somebody who's kind of intellectually sophisticated and has a sense of humor about movement, and brings something to the table, themselves. Sometimes, like, if you get somebody who's just like, just show me what to do,
Mhm.
that's not great, for me. I mean, I think other choreographers might like that, somebody who's just completely blank.
Yeah.
But I kind of like a relationship with people, but they need to understand the balance. Some people, like if I'm thinking about something, there'll be dancers who think, oh, that's trouble.
Yeah.
And they don't get that that's part of the process.
Mhm. How did you meet Nancy Braun?
Really interesting. They auctioned off a class at a cancer benefit with me.
Mm.
So at this cancer, I can't remember what the cancer was, but at this benefit, they had an auction, and one of the things that people could bid on was a class with me.
Oh my gosh.
And this woman won the auction and had a class for her, got a dance class for her son with me as the part of the auction. And Nancy was her niece and came along.
Oh my
And
god.
that's where I met her. And I think maybe that's why she came along to meet me and all. But
Yeah.
and then it wasn't like I did something on the show Empire,
Mhm.
and I called her. It's like, hey, can you come in? And I need to make up some hip hop stuff. And we worked. And I was looking at those videos the other day. They're kind of hilarious. Like little Nancy, like doing her like funky hip hop moves. And then, but then, just kind of gradually, I had another longtime assistant, who Jen Rapp, who was directing more and less and less available, and Nancy was available, so it just kind of naturally segued into her.
Oh my gosh, that's like fate meeting like that.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? And I actually am having meetings today because I know Nancy, she's getting a lot of other stuff. She's going to start choreographing herself. So today, after we talk, I have like three different Zooms with potential assistants. I'm trying to find another Nancy.
Another Nancy. Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
If I need to, we'll see. Maybe I won't need to for a while, but
What's been, out of all the projects you've worked on recently and you've been doing so much, what's been your favorite and can you share any little fun behind the scenes?
let's see. What have I done recently? The Missing, Three Women, Gilded Age. The Gilded Age, I guess I have to say, was the end of season one of the Gilded Age was the most fun because we'd worked, it was the first show I did during the pandemic. It was in November, December, January of, like 2020, beginning of
Oh my
2021.
gosh.
So it's like we were back pretty soon.
Yeah.
And there was, I think 32 dancers, full period.
Hmm.
I really enjoy like researching period dance and recreations of period dance and then doing my own versions of those things. And I guess the fun anecdote I could say is, we rehearsed, we didn't rehearse on Zoom, we rehearsed in person. We were quarantined up in Newport, Rhode Island, in a hotel. But and we had a game room. The only place people could go, like we were quarantined in this hotel, was this game room that they took a big ballroom and they put, chairs like 8 feet apart.
Uh-huh.
It's hilarious. Food would be delivered to your door, and
Hmm.
so the fun moment was the first time I saw these 32 dancers' faces
Mm.
was when
Yeah.
they pulled their masks off to shoot. You probably had that experience,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And it's a weird experience. Like you've been working with these people, you've gotten used to them with masks, and
Yeah.
it's very hard to communicate with like a big group of people with I'm wearing a mask and they're wearing masks.
Hmm.
Hard to keep people's attention. Everything is muffled. But then when we went to shoot, and they're like, okay, they called it going green on Gilded Age. We're going green, and everybody pulled their masks off. It was so
Yeah.
weird to see their faces. Like, oh, you're quite a beautiful group. Um, yeah,
Yes, I had the same experience, and it's interesting because you kind of make up the person's like bottom half of their face with their wearing a mask. Take it down, and it's either like, oh, that is what I was expecting, or oh, that isn't what I was expecting.
yeah, yeah. My general feeling was like, oh, that people were just so much more attractive without the masks.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, what a beautiful group.
Yeah. Well, I always like to end on this question. What do you want your legacy to be?
The play I'm writing now, which is a play with dancing, um, that I'm struggling all week on this last scene, but I've been working on it for about 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
Because I've had to, I wrote before, but I've had to really learn how to really write. And so each scene in this play, could be months.
Wow.
And so it's a play with dancing. And I just really want that to be, my next thing and the thing that people know me for.
Hmm.
Um, that would be it. That I was, Robbins liked to say that what his real gift was in conceiving the dance, like figuring out where does the dance go in the story and how is the dance furthering the story, how is the dance part of the story, like he did the opening of West Side Story, like the conception of that was his, and he felt like that was his real strength. And I feel like that I would like that to be what I'm known for, because I feel in all these millions of different kinds of shows and theater pieces and stuff that I work on, that there's just been so many different ways in which dance is used, and I've developed this sort of vocabulary and understanding about how can dance tell a story and further a story. Back to the holy harmonies, really, like, their purpose in the story, and you know, how did that further the plot of Dead to Me?
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this. You are incredible. I'm honored that you
Thanks.
are here.
You got me going. That was easy, right? You couldn't
Yeah.
shut me up.